Welcome everyone to our SpedNet webinar, Preparing Your Child for a Socially Successful Holiday Season with Justyna Balzar. We're so pleased to have you join us. I'm Eve Kessler, co-founder and executive director of SpedNet, and Ali Sheffers will be hosting this webinar. SpedNet was created over 20 years ago as a nonprofit to educate and empower parents of students with special needs to become their children's best advocates. In addition to our webinars and presentations, we have a terrific and easily accessible website with videos of all our presentations and webinars sorted by topic and speaker, as well as related articles and materials. We've also published an excellent interactive guide to special services, bringing knowledge to the table, how to be an effective advocate for your child. It's free on our website with paperbacks available for purchase. If you have a student in the Wilton Public Schools, you may receive a paperback copy free of charge from the Office of Special Ed. Today, we welcome Justyna Balzar, who will review behavior strategies you can use to help your children survive the holiday season and experience true social success. Justyna is a board-certified behavior analyst with a master's degree in education. She is a co-founder of the Hangout Spot in Norwalk and has over 15 years experience with learners of varying profiles between the ages of 3 and 18. If you find this information and support helpful, please feel free to donate to SpedNet. We're a nonprofit organization and your donations go directly to programming. A couple of ground rules. Be mindful that this is an open forum and the presentation is being recorded, so we cannot guarantee confidentiality. You may not want to reveal any private information in your questions. The webinar video will be sent out to you all by email tomorrow and also posted on our website and YouTube channel. Justyna will take questions at the end of her talk, so please type your questions into the Q&A and not into the chat. It's easier for us that way to keep track. Any information provided in the presentation is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. Lastly, this webinar is presented in partnership with Wilton Public Schools and the Newtown SPED PTA. Thank you, Justyna. We'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everyone. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Eve, can you see the presentation nice and big?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about how to prepare your child to have a socially successful holiday season. And as we know, that the holidays can be really, really exciting, but they can also come with their own challenges. So we'll talk about behavior strategies that you can use to make that more socially successful for your child and less stressful for everyone all around. Let's start by talking about where the stress comes from. So there's a couple of things that happen around the holidays, especially first and foremost is the fact that kids have more free time because of that long break. So for some kids, that's a week, some kids, that's a week and a half, and in some instances that may be longer, which results in a disruption to the routine that kids are now in the flow of with school, right? There's a very, very established routine at this point, with getting up in the morning, when you have breakfast, when you leave out the door, and with longer breaks, that routine is changed significantly. Right now we can sleep in later, we can stay up later perhaps. There's less structure and activities throughout the day, there's more free time, and that in and of itself can be stressful for a child who relies heavily on routine and perhaps has a hard time with unexpected changes. Then in addition to that, there's also this increased social demand during the holidays. So we're seeing more relatives, we're seeing more friends. There's more pressure to interact, engage, converse, and less downtime during times when we are around other family members and friends. And that comes with its own host of stressors, right? And then let's not forget, there's also parental stress. So if we're hosting for the holidays, right, we are doing a whole variety of things to try and make sure that everything goes well, from what we're going to cook to whether or not the house is nice and tidy, to gifts and all of those components, while also trying to reestablish some sort of routine for our kids during that time that they're off, so that there can be some sense of order. So all of those stressors compounded, if we don't put in supports in place for kids who have a hard time with unexpected changes and disruptions to routine, can be particularly challenging. But it's also a unique opportunity to model positivity, to teach flexibility, and to counter disappointments by perhaps creating some new family traditions. So there's some great skills that can be learned in these downtimes, whether that's around the holidays or long extended vacations, right? There's opportunities to see where our kids thrive and opportunities to see where they need that additional support, and unique opportunities for us to be able to provide that by setting in some boundaries and doing some teaching. So if there's some sort of disappointment that happens around the holidays, whether that's, someone not being able to make it because they're not feeling well, or a disruption to something your child was expecting to happen but didn't happen, right? This is a great opportunity to be able to work through that with your kids. Perhaps it also happens around times when you go shopping for gifts, right? How many kids want everything in the store, right? And don't necessarily understand the concept of shopping for someone else, or we're here for something specific, right? How do we handle that? So there's lots of room for disappointments around the holidays for our little ones who thrive on routine and have a hard time with unexpected changes. And it's a great opportunity to teach around that. So asking kids what they're disappointed about, getting them to talk. It's a great opportunity to work on communication skills, but also reinforce communicating your emotions, right? If your child can't communicate using words necessarily, you can't nail, if you can, then you can look at their behavior, right? So we could look at, what are they moving away from? What are they moving towards? What are they protesting? But if you can nail down what they're disappointed about, you can find a successful alternative, right? And then we can turn that negative into a positive. We can turn it into a teaching opportunity. When disappointments happen, it's also really important to give choices and control over substitute activities. So our kids are so used to, especially with school, having a lot of structure. Going into an unstructured situation may be really hard for them to identify the things that they could be doing, right? Or how they could occupy their time. So leaving it open-ended can be particularly challenging. So giving them choices, or if there is something that they're disappointed about, suggesting substitutes, using that as an opportunity to problem solve with them, is going to go a long way in terms of building skills and building that communication. So let's dive deeper into how we can not only survive but thrive with kids this holiday season. One of the things that's really important is to create some sort of schedule and daily routine. So as I mentioned in the beginning, all schedules and routines get very much disrupted when kids are off of school, especially around the holidays, because there's lots of things that are that we need to get done during that time frame. So we might be shuffling around a lot more. running a lot more errands. And so it's important to have some sort of routine established, letting your child have a degree of control over their day in terms of what they should expect. So maybe you're not having breakfast at the same time of the day as you would when your child is leaving for school in the morning. That's okay, but establish a time of day that is repeatable for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to the greatest degree possible, right? Try to maintain your child's regular schedule as closely as possible. So if your child has a routine of, picking out their clothes the night before to get ready for the next day, right? Stick with that. Try and disrupt as little as possible to their regular schedule. Consider adding structure on wake up times, bedtimes, and meal times. So we talked about the meal times, but wake up times and bedtimes is also important. So instead of leaving it open-ended and saying, okay, well, we're just going to go to bed whenever we feel tired, everybody goes to bed. Yes, we go to bed a little later, but we all go to bed by 9:30, right? And so we still have to get these things done by then. That routine is important, and that ability to know what to expect goes a long way for your child. You can post and refer to visual schedules, to-do lists, picture schedules. So if you have a lot of errands to run during the day, you have to go holiday shopping or mail out cards, whatever that looks like. You can have your child be a helper in that process. And you can also let them know when those things are happening throughout the day, whether that's a picture schedule, or if your child can read, you can write it down, have them check things off as they go along. And all of those components might be really helpful. If you do have any travel or special plans, make sure to prepare your child for those ahead of time as well. And to the greatest degree possible, you're not always going to be able to do this, right? But try and let your child know when deviations to routines are going to happen in advance, to the greatest degree possible, right? And then those moments that we can't control, those are the moments that we teach. Well, sometimes unexpected things happen. We're going to work together to figure out how to problem solve around this, right? So using something we like to call talk out loud problem solving, just talking the situation through with your child is going to help immensely, and you're going to be modeling the behavior that you would like for them to use in the future. So in some instances, people are traveling over the holidays, right? So whether you're traveling a long distance in a car or in a train or on a plane, right? You want to try and occupy your child's time, right? Depending on how long the travel is, it can be really exhausting and challenging for little ones to sit in one place for such an extended period of time, right? So we want to pair something that's neutral with or not preferred with something that's reinforcing to make it more reinforcing, right? So how can we make an extended car ride feel less aversive, right? Or an extended plane ride where you're sitting in your seat for a long period of time less aversive, right? What can we do during those times to break up that time, to keep our kids busy, so that travel component is successful, right? So simple things, right? If we're planning on traveling in a plane, giving the aisle or window seat if possible, right? Aisle, if your child needs to go to the bathroom a lot, you want to be closer to the aisle, right? For road trips, you can maybe plan some fun stops along the way. Are there short little places you can stop to break the trip up? What kind of things can you pack on your trip that you could intermittently introduce to your child to keep them occupied? So when I used to travel with my daughter when she was smaller, and we would go on plane rides to visit family, one of the things that I would do is go to the dollar store and just buy a bunch of little like novel toys and knickknacks, right? And I would pack them in my bag, and every hour to hour and a half, right, she'd have something novel to keep her attention, so that she could sit and withstand, right, the duration of that flight, and be occupied, right? Otherwise it would be pretty challenging for not only her, but everybody around, right? So when we're thinking about holiday shopping, right, this can be particularly challenging, especially what, as we talked about, as I mentioned a little earlier, when you're heading into a store, and your child doesn't understand, especially when you're heading into a store filled with toys and you're buying toys for someone else and you're bringing your child in with you, and they don't understand the concept of purchasing for someone else, right? Perhaps they want, a variety of things that they see, but that's not the purpose of the visit. That can be really challenging. So if you know that you're going to be going into a situation like this with your child, you want to be forward thinking on some of these things, right? So setting clear expectations is going to be really important regarding purchases. You can let your child know that maybe they can pick out one thing in the store, but first they have to be a helper and they have to help you find all these other things, right? So you're occupying their time, you're managing their expectations, you're preparing them for what to expect, and then you're also reinforcing that behavior, right, by potentially getting them something small at the end. You can use first then language on trips to really support that. Also, make sure that if you are bringing your child out into the community, that their basic needs are met. So they're well fed, right? They're not going into the community hungry, because any one of us hungry, right, can reduce our tolerance to respond to stressors. But for our kids who already have a difficult time handling a variety of stressors, adding the component of hunger or thirst or not feeling well, all of those things, right, can exacerbate those stressors, not getting enough sleep. So it's really important that when you are going out into the community to do things like this with your child, you want to make sure that those basic needs are met, or you have a plan for them, right? So if you know that you're going to be going out, and it's going to be around lunchtime or when your child gets hungry, pack a snack, right? Or let them know that they might be able to pick out a snack, right? That might be one of the things that they can get. So trying to be proactive about the situations that you're bringing the social situations that you're bringing your child into, to help them be more successful. So other things you can do is shop during off-peak hours, right? So instead of going during the busiest time, trying maybe going earlier in the morning, and doing shopping then, or later in the evening, as opposed to in the middle of the day on the weekend, right? So keeping those types of things in mind can also reduce the sensory overload as a result of going out into the community, right? So thinking about all of those setting events, you can also use a timer to help monitor how much time is left, manage your child's expectations, right? For kids who don't understand the concept of time, a timer is particularly helpful, right? And without that, it can be particularly challenging, because for a child who has a hard time waiting an extended period of time can be very, very stressful, right? And it can exacerbate their ability not to handle other stressors and the behavior that they exhibit, because they're exhausted, right? Or they're tired, or they're cranky, whatever that looks like. you can, so if your child is easily overwhelmed by opening lots of presents at once, so holidays can be filled with lots of fun and gifts and all of those components, right? But some kids, it's difficult to handle all those things at once, right? And they don't have to be presented all at once. You can modify how you do those types of things to make them more successful for your child. So if your child is overwhelmed by opening lots of presents all at once, you can spread out that distribution over the course of the week, right? Or over the course of the day, and do little by little. And there's something new to look forward to each day, right? You can also save gifts and put them away for a later time, right? Sometimes kids get a lot of things for the holidays, right? And it's good to have some of these things reserved for, a bad weather day or a sick day or a time that you're traveling, to have something novel to occupy them. They don't necessarily need to get all of that at once, especially if they're not able to handle all of that at once. So it can be particularly challenging if you're having company over, or if you're going to someone else's house for the holidays, right? The social demands there can be significantly more, right, than if you're just hanging out at home, or with just one or two people. So it's really important to understand what are the things that stress your child out, and how can you be proactive about putting supports in place to make those things feel less stressful. So can you tell your child what to expect when company comes over, or what to expect when they're going over someone else's house to the greatest degree possible, right? Does your child, if you have company coming over, does your child have really special toys and things that they like to play with that they don't like to share? And potentially, if other kids try and play with them, that could be a problem. So that's okay. That's an opportunity to proactively, ahead of the visit, right, communicate with your child and say something like, hey, we have some friends coming over and you guys are going to get to play with lots of toys. I know you have some special toys that you don't want others to play with because they're super special to you. That's okay. Why don't we put them away in a safe place, so no one will be able to access them, right? So then you're proactively mitigating something, right? A stressor from happening. So just being forward thinking about those things, clearly identifying with your child, what toys are you willing to share, right? What spaces are you willing to play in? And defining those rules and expectations is going to be really, really important. And then certainly, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. So modeling those skills is going to be really important. You can pre-practice some of these things. So if something is particularly challenging for your child around the holidays, or when company comes over, or when they go over someone else's house, you can literally role play the situation with them so they get comfortable with how to respond and what to do and what to say, so that when they are faced with that situation, they're comfortable and confident using those skills, and they can still pull on them in moments when they're feeling stressed, right? And then if you are role playing, you have the opportunity then to provide gentle feedback. I love how you said X, Y, and Z, or how you did X, Y, and Z. Let's try it again. And next time, why don't you try doing this, right? And let's see how that works. So you could practice that. You could practice and model things like sharing toys, right? Having conversations, all of those components you can practice ahead of going into situations with guests or having guests come over. Now, you also want to have a backup plan. This is really important, right? Because you may do a lot of things proactively, and your child may encounter a situation that's super stressful and they're overwhelmed, whether that's at home or wherever you are out with the family. You want to have a backup plan. So, what types of activities or options does your child have if they're feeling bored or overexcited or upset, where they're able to re-regulate their emotions and maybe have a little bit of time and space to themselves? So clearly identifying whether that's in a home, okay, if you get upset or if you need space away from someone else, here's where we can go, right? And clearly identifying where that location is and how your child can seek that support. And when you're out in the community, maybe there's, or at someone else's house, maybe there's a code word you practiced with your child, right? And they say, or a signal of some kind, and they show you or say the word, and you know that they need some sort of break or space away from the social situation or group. And then you can make a plan for what that will look like with them to just excuse yourself for a little bit of time to help them get their need met in that moment. So all really important proactive things that you can do to help make those social interactions more successful. Holiday traditions. So, we all have different things that perhaps we pass down and we try and pass down to our kids. Sometimes our kids might not be into some of the things that we're trying to pass down, or the traditions that we're trying to do. Maybe they're challenging for them. Maybe they're missing some skills. How can we make that more successful? So this is, again, a place where you would want to practice those skills and rehearse them ahead of time. If something is really, really meaningful to you, and really important to you to happen, don't wait until it's actually happening to manage the situation. Try to be forward thinking around it and identify how you can practice and teach those skills so that your child is more likely to be successful in that situation, especially when you know that your child has a history of being unsuccessful in similar situations in the past, right? So you want to do something ahead of time, whether that's practice, some sort of modification, to make that more successful. Areas where this might be relevant. So if you're going to church or a synagogue, right? If you're sitting at a table for dinner, right? Things like dressing up. Some kids have, maybe there's an expectation of what types of clothes to wear, and kids have sensory things. Perhaps the clothes are itchy or they don't feel good, right? How can we figure these things out ahead of the actual day or event, instead of stressing about it on the day of, right? So really important to be proactive. Review changes to traditions in advance. So if you are going to modify something, you want to make sure that you're letting the child know what to expect, right? Part of that disruption to routine is embedded in this, right? So if you are making changes and you're not preparing your child for them, they don't know the expectations, there's a lower likelihood that they will be successful. Also find ways to plan for an additional fun to combat disappointment. So we talked about this in the beginning, but especially when you are going into perhaps when you're a guest at someone else's home for the holidays, right? There's more opportunities for disappointment than there potentially would be at home, right? Your child might have certain expectations of the way things are going to happen. So making sure that you have some proactive ways to handle those disappointments in the moment, ways to distract your child, as we talked about a little earlier, perhaps some sort of signal or cue to remove them from the situation, to give them time to re-regulate, are all important things to consider. So ways to modify holidays to be more socially successful. So having a small dinner with only people who live in your household or close family members. So if your child is super overwhelmed with like 20 people over, right, maybe starting that gathering in a smaller context would help them, right? Or limiting the amount of time that they have to be around that number of people would be helpful, right? Preparing traditional family recipes for families and neighbors. So COVID hasn't entirely gone away here, right? There's still some considerations. Something unexpected that might happen, right? Someone might not be able to come because they have to quarantine. While we've certainly, while we're certainly in a much different position now than we were 2 years ago or a year ago in terms of how we celebrate the holidays with COVID, there still certainly is that risk, and that risk of disappointment, right? Or unexpected changes as a result of people not being able to make it, right? If shopping in store is just way too overwhelming, even if you provide modifications, maybe you could limit that and do some of that shopping online rather than in person, and then slowly work up to that, right? Other things you can do during the holidays, right? So watching parades with your child as opposed to actually going to the parade, right? Much more overwhelming in a social situation. Or if you are going to go to a parade or a big event, right? Thinking about where you can sit that will be less overwhelming, right? Where you have an easy way out if you need to transition out of this situation is going to be really important. Other things you can do, right? So having small outdoor dinners with families and friends who live in your community. If you want to do something more community based, visiting pumpkin patches, orchards. I think that has passed. Attending small outdoor events are great ways to practice, right? Getting your child prepared to be around more people around the holidays. Other fun activities that you can do to break up that daily routine, that daily lack of routine, and provide a little bit more structure, right? If there's snow, you can have an outdoor snowman contest. You can also have a snowman contest with Play-Doh, right? Do some more winter-based, holiday-based activities throughout the day. Embed those in a scavenger hunt, a cookie bake-off, cookie exchanges, gift exchanges, holiday movie nights. So you can create structure within breaks during the holidays, right? And give your child something to look forward to and something to expect. And you can even add those things to the visual schedule, right? So they have things that they know are going to be happening. If some of these are particularly challenging and there's skills you want to practice within them, you can break them apart, right? And you can practice those things and embed those skills within those activities to help build up your child's confidence. Some other ideas for things you can do around the holidays: one-way Secret Santa, where you have individually wrapped goodies and bags are lined up for participants to grab and go. Small outdoor activities, going on walks, looking at holiday lights. That's a really fun thing to do around the holidays, especially at night. One of the better parts of winter is driving around and seeing the cheeriness of the lights that people put up around the holidays. Having movie nights, doing a fire pit, a lighting the fireplace, roasting marshmallows, right? All of those things can be activities that you can embed to create a little bit more holiday fun, but then also some routine and structure. Some ideas for teens. So mini celebrations, cookie bake-offs, Secret Santa. You can get your teen involved in some sending care packages or doing something for the community. So there's a lot of shelters, animal shelters are accepting like are accepting blankets. Perhaps your child can like make a blanket for an animal, or go and volunteer and read a story to an animal, spend some time. So ways to get out in the community and to socialize. Crafting, so doing crafts during the holidays is another way to not only work on skills, but embed some routine and structure into the day. You could start a crafting chain for a holiday related project and share that with family and friends. You can start a competition. So best gingerbread house, best holiday lights, whatever that looks like. There's also, I believe the place that what's that train in Essex that it's like
the steam train.
The steam train. Yeah. So I think that's opened up again. I think that was very limited in terms of what they were able to do during that COVID, but that's another fun activity to do during the holidays. And I believe they also have sensory friendly nights. So something to look into there. If you are concerned about COVID during the holidays, because COVID, flu, all of those things are going around, there is a chance, right, that they might impact plans during the holidays, right? And you want more ideas. There's also some ideas still listed on the CDC website, so you can certainly visit there for more ideas. Overnight trips. So we talked about some of this in the beginning in terms of how to make travel more successful. But what can we do to make staying over someone else's house or in a hotel more successful, right? So some kids may have sensory barriers, right? When it comes to going out and staying in a different place, right? Things smell different. There are different sounds, right? The sheets might feel different. How can we mitigate for some of those things if we know those things are going to be a challenge for our kids, right? So think about it proactively. Again, a lot of proactive thinking, a lot of prep going into making things successful, whether that's travel or outings or social experiences, right? You want to think about what are those things that in the past have been challenging for your child when you have had an overnight trip somewhere, whether that's in a hotel or a family member's house, right? Did smells bother them? Did sounds bother them? Was it hard to sleep? Was it the sheets, right? Things like sheets, can we bring your child's favorite blanket or something of that nature, right? To help with that sensory experience. Sounds, are there headphones or things that we could bring with us? Can we talk about the different sounds with our child to help them understand what they are and where they're coming from? Certainly, right? So there are things that you can do ahead of time to prepare your child for those things that they might experience that may be difficult for them sensory wise. Bring familiar items from home to make the unfamiliar better, right? Or a little bit more familiar. So we talked about the blanket, but you could have your child bring a pillow or a favorite toy or a special smelling soap, right? Some kids have to use a particular toothpaste, right? And when you go into when you're staying in a hotel room or at a family member's house, they might not have that toothpaste, and that can make toothbrushing time a battle, right? So proactively thinking about those things and bringing them with you can make those little moments more successful, right? And then thinking about, how much time away is just right for your child. Is a week too long? Should it be a little less than that, right? Also having a backup plan is really important. So, are you able to maybe take two cars and have grandparents be a backup if the situation is too challenging for your child, right? So as much of things as you can think about ahead of time is going to be really important. Now, we've done a lot of time talking, or we've spent a lot of time talking about the importance of creating a routine, right? And having some sort of routine in that unstructured time. But it's also important to have some downtime built in, right? And we do want our children to be able to learn how to handle downtime and what to do. And it's important for all of us to kind of just unwind and relax, right? And this might be a time where you have to teach some skills to your child and help them come up with options on things they could do during their downtime, or they may already know what feels good for them during downtime, right? If it's safe and it helps them regulate themselves, then that's okay, right? But things like avoiding coming home late on a Sunday, when there's a school time or school the next day, or working on the schedule first thing on Monday, adding some rest and relaxation to the calendar, right? Allowing yourself and your kids to really rest up, rejuvenate back for the transition. Something to also keep in mind as you're getting closer. So as the break from a vacation break, holiday time off from school is coming to an end, you're going to want to slowly transition your child back to a routine, bedtime and wake up routine that's closer to what they would expect when they're in school, right? You don't want to make that an abrupt change. So if your child went from waking up at 7 a.m. to waking up at 9 a.m. because they went to bed at 11 as opposed to 8 or 9, right? You don't want to like rip that Band-Aid off immediately. You want to make that transition a little more thought out and smoother so that it's more successful for your child. So maybe start that transition 2 to 3 days before you get back into the routine of going to school, right? So thinking about those things as well. Okay, so how can in thinking about our older kids, right? How can we support safely in terms of thinking about COVID exposures and things of that nature? Planning for a safe return home from school with as minimum exposure as possible. Really trying to understand where our kids are in the holidays. Creating a work-play balance that has been disrupted, right? So bringing more routine back in there, allowing your child to express their opinions and their feelings, giving them time to vent, time to talk, right? Clearly defining expectations is going to be real important, as we talked about before. And then leaving room to negotiate, right? So if there's something that they would like to do instead, talking that through within boundaries and limits, right? Okay, let's see. Where are we? I think we can open it up to questions. If anybody,
I don't see any questions right now. Guys, if anybody has questions, this would be the time to type it into the Q&A. That was great, Justina. I love the idea of traveling with a friend. We used to do that all the time, and it made all the difference in the world because you have a built-in
Yeah,
companion who gets along with your kid and who they can share stuff with. And that was a wonderful thing that we used to do with my little guy. And also that whole pre-teaching
yes,
for like everything. And we generally don't think about it because we think, oh, everything is going to go fine. But the pre-teaching, when kids are really little, we would do things with social stories. So the kids would be, totally involved in it because they'd be actually drawing the social stories or cutting things out. And
right.
all that pre-teaching was really created a much better time.
Yeah, yeah. Oftentimes we don't think about these things until the last minute, and then we're just caught up in these stressful situations. But there's a lot of things we can do ahead of time to make those situations that have been stressful in the past less stressful.
Yeah. So I see that we don't have Q&A, which is fine. I know that people are really, oh, hold on. Oh,
Oh,
we got a thank you, great lecture. Anybody have any questions? That would be great. I don't see any more.
okay.
So thank you. We really appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Our next presentation will be on January 5th with Nancy Schwartz, the speech pathologist, basic inferring of information, the importance for reading and for life. So that'll be our next one. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Justyna.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to spend my morning with you guys.
Thanks. Take good care, everybody.
Bye.